Captain Alistair Reed was a man of ledgers and latitudes, not of mysteries. His brig, the Sea Serpent, was known in the ports of the Caribbean and the American coast for its reliability, not for its speed. He carried timber, molasses, and cotton, honest cargo for an honest profit. He asked no questions of his employers, and they offered no explanations. It was an arrangement that had served him well for 15 years. The offer in Havana was different from the start. The man was not a merchant, but a functionary, dressed in a suit too fine for the humid, salt-stained air of the docks. He gave his name as Mr. Silas, and his payment was in gold coin, up front and double the usual rate. The cargo was a single, large, and curiously heavy wooden crate, secured with iron bands. Its destination was a secluded plantation dock on the Louisiana coast. "The contents are fragile," Mr. Silas said, his voice a low, smooth murmur. "It is of utmost importance that the crate remain sealed. It must not be opened under any circumstances. The air holes are for ventilation of wood, nothing more." He fixed Captain Reed with a stare that was both placid and threatening. "You are a man of reputation, Captain. See that it remains intact." Alistair Reed was a pragmatist, but he was not a fool. Air holes in a crate pointed to a living cargo. Animals, perhaps. Exotic birds for some wealthy planter. But the weight, the secrecy, and the sheer price gnawed at him. As the Sea Serpent cut through the placid Gulf waters, the crate sat in the center of the main hold, a silent, brooding presence. A faint, floral scent like dried lavender and something else, fierce sweat, seemed to emanate from it. The crew, a superstitious lot, gave it a wide berth. They whispered of hearing sounds, not the scratching of an animal, but the soft, muffled sound of a human sigh. Alistair dismissed it as the creaking of the ship and the wind. But one night, during his watch, he saw it for himself. A slender, pale finger had emerged from one of the air holes, tracing the grain of the wood from the inside before quickly withdrawing. His blood ran cold. He was not transporting birds or contraband. He was transporting a person, a prisoner, a slave. The thought sickened him. He had run a clean ship, never dipping into that vile trade. Had he been tricked into it? For 2 days, he warred with his conscience. To break the seal was to violate his contract, to risk his reputation and the wrath of Mr. Silas. To do nothing was to be complicit in a horror he could not comprehend. The memory of that fragile finger decided him. Late that night, with only the moon and a single lantern for witness, he took a crowbar to the hold. His first mate, a grizzled old tar named Brendan, stood guard, his face grim. With a splintering crack, the lid gave way. Inside, nestled amidst cushions and blankets, was not a caged animal, nor a shackled slave. It was a woman. Her clothes, though now wrinkled and travel-stained, were of fine quality, a lady's gown. Her hair was a cascade of dark gold, and her eyes, wide with terror, were the color of the sea under a stormy sky. A clean linen cloth was tied across her mouth as a gag. Her wrists and ankles were bound with soft silk, meant not to chafe but to restrain. As Alistair stood frozen in shock, Brendan spoke, his voice hushed. "Captain, that's no plantation wench. That's a gentlewoman." The woman's name was Isabella de Leon. She told them once the gag was removed and she had drunk some water, her voice hoarse but cultured. She was the daughter of a Spanish nobleman in Havana, promised in a political marriage to a ruthless, much older French planter in Louisiana, a man named Laurent. Her father, deeply in debt, had agreed to the match. Isabella, upon learning of the man's brutal reputation, had refused. Her refusal was not an option. Mr. Silas was Laurent's agent, and the crate was the means to deliver an unwilling bride. "He means to break my spirit," she whispered, her gaze steady on Alistair. To deliver me like property, so I arrive with no hope, no will to resist. Alistair Reed was a man of commerce, but in that moment, he saw a different kind of ledger. On one side, gold and a safe reputation. On the other, a human soul. The choice was no choice at all. The Sea Serpent never made it to the Louisiana dock. Alistair altered their course, telling the crew a story of a storm and navigational error. He used the gold to buy their silence and their cooperation. They sailed instead for Charleston, a bustling port where a person could disappear. The journey transformed from a simple delivery into a tense flight. Alistair, who had spent his life navigating by stars and charts, now found himself navigating the treacherous waters of another man's heart. He and Isabella spoke for hours on the quarterdeck. She was educated, witty, and possessed a fire that her ordeal had not extinguished. He, in turn, found himself sharing parts of his own life he had long kept sealed away. The pragmatic captain and the spirited noblewoman, thrown together by fate, discovered a connection that neither had sought. In Charleston, he helped her establish a new life under a new name, using the remainder of the gold to secure a small cottage and a position as a tutor for a wealthy family's children. The day he left her at the doorstep was the hardest sale he had ever ordered. A year later, his feet, seemingly of their own accord, brought him back to Charleston. He told himself he was merely checking on an investment. He found her in a small garden, her laughter ringing in the air, freer than he had ever heard it. When she saw him, her smile did not fade, it widened. "Captain Reed," she said, "I knew you would return." Alistair Reed, the man of ledgers, had finally found a cargo worth more than gold. He had not just saved a woman from a terrible fate. He had, in the process, found a reason to drop his own anchor at last.